Hey, it's Nick from Venture Minis. At first glance, the Ratlings might look like a big, unmovable wall that just plays defensively, but this is not true. This team is incredibly aggressive, but you need to know how to leverage your abilities in order to move yourself from being just a bunch of sniper rifle turrets to a backline diving fiend. Let's get into it. This team is great because it has a bunch of multi-layered threats. What I mean by this is that it has a bunch of big melee threats in the form of the Ogrins and the Bulgrins, and some serious range threats because every single person has a sniper rifle. Even though the damage profile is just 3-3 with Devastating 3, those Devastating 3 will come up if you just keep rolling dice with Devastating 3. You'll roll 6s eventually. This team is great at objectives as well. You can steal missions, you can do free mission actions, and they have some seriously good movement, despite just having 5 inches of movement on paper. Speaking of movement, this team has a bunch of versatile positioning potential with their Scarper ability, allowing them to move before they move, or to be able to move after they've already activated. Because this team really only has 3 big walls that you need to keep up, this team can really fall apart if you let one side of the board collapse, because it collapses quickly. Once the Ogrin and Bulgrin are gone, you really don't have a lot of health, and as such, this seems pretty glass cannon-y. Lastly, this team has a bunch of moving pieces, so it can get a little heavy on the cognitive load side. Alright, so real quick, before we get into operatives, what is their special rule? It's Scarper. It's this dash. You get a free dash every other enemy activation. It's before the start of your activation, but it's only every other enemy activation. So what does this mean? I keep track of this with a coin, starting with heads up. Before you activate, check the coin. If it's heads, decide if you want to dash. Heads means that you have the dash available. If you dash, flip the coin to tails, so that when the next time you activate an operative, it's tails, and so then you have to flip it back over to heads, and so then you know, on the next activation, you'll be able to do your dash. Try this out, I promise. This keeps it really easy for keeping track of when you can actually do it. Remember, you can't do this on the final activation or if you have the first activation because it has to be after an enemy operative. The sneak also has their own unique dash, which you can look at in just a moment. Oh, this is a 3-inch dash before activation. So that means heavy with no movement doesn't matter here. You can do this pre-dash before the activation because heavy doesn't apply until the actual activation. Another reminder, heavy with no measurement means you can't do any movement at all during the activation. This effectively means you have heavy dash on everyone on the team for most purposes. However, this dash can be used for a lot more than just that. You know that your team only has 5 inches of movement on everyone except the Ogrin, but that's actually 8 inches. Or maybe it's 11 inches, because you can do a pre-activation dash, a move, and a dash. That's 11 inches. It's pretty similar to Eldar movement. Sure, you won't be doing this all the time because you're not going to be shooting after that, but it is really important to know that you can get out of dodge or into dodge if you need to. With all this in mind, that means you're not actually a turtle faction. Oftentimes, this means you are just going to have operatives sitting there available to shoot with their sniper rifles stationary. This means you do have a brick wall that is really dangerous. That said, you're really able to take massive swings to the enemy. This includes your bomber, this includes your Ogrin, this includes the big shot. Your defensive abilities allow you to be aggressive, such as the tripwires and the mines and all of those extra equipment. You can also really disrupt their backline objectives with the Raider or that 11 inches of movement. You're not trying to make your opponent make a bunch of mistakes. You're trying to make them go into positions which are the safest positions for them to be in, which are then also dangerous. This allows you to then score on Tac Ops, score on Crit Ops, and deny your opponent scoring. Alright, so what operatives do I include? I really like the Fixer, the Bomber, the Big Shot, Spotter, Stash Master, Vox Thief, 2 times Bulgrin, 1 times Ogrin, Raider, and Sneak. That's sort of the default that I go for. I like the Fixer with the battle rifle because I think the 2-up bolter is a pretty good profile and I like having that flexibility. This means I also know he's available to move to make sure that his strategic gambit can get off and he can have lethal 5-up on a target at the start of each turning point. The Bomber is a no-brainer take. These tripwires are critical. They just need to be 2 inches away from other markers. They stop the action when they're tripped and they subtract an APL. The mine bonus is nice, but even if you had neither of these things, I think the explosive arsenal is just worth taking on its own. You can kill just anything you throw it at. The tech here is that despite explosive arsenal just being a 3-inch range, most explosives aren't going to be able to throw beyond that anyways because of Volcus and ITD as they are. The big benefit here is that it only has a 1-inch blast, so you're really always just trying to get within 2 inches to break cover here. And you can do that pretty easily. It's got a 5-inch reposition only on its special rule, but with a 3-inch Scarper, that means the threat range is actually about 10 inches or 11 inches if you don't really need to break cover. That is better than a typical charge. This means you can keep the bomber outside of charge range of an operative and still threaten them. And they could be behind cover. Like, that's amazing. Okay, the big shot is pretty self-explanatory. It's got a great gun. Even the mobile profile is really good, especially with purloined rations, the equipment option. Keeping the spotter with him is really good, so you can just threaten the whole board, essentially. Even if you can only shoot the big shot once, it's really good. And it has the rifle keyword, so all of our Strat Ploys and Tactical Ploys apply here. It just needs to shoot once. Speaking of the spotter is really, really good. It can target someone, and then they can have their cover removed, light cover, and they can also be not obscured anymore. This is to anyone within 3 inches of the spotter, and so that's massive. This means you can probably support people that are on Vantage. You can also support a number of operatives next to you. With Scarper, you can have those operatives move into the spotter's radius. The worst case scenario is that the spotter and the big shot sit there covering one angle and they ruin someone's day on Vantage. This is really great on Volcus when you can cover basically a whole lane and then also get an off angle up onto the 3rd level Vantage. Because this ignores obscuring and has Seek Light, this means you can really get people. The Sash Masher has a free mission action. That's pretty insane when you consider the whole 11-inch move thing I just told you about. That means he gets 11 inches of movement and a free mission action. He also lets you take 2 ammo caches, which is great to make your 2-up and 3-up shots more reliable. The worst case scenario, your Stash Master goes and just opens doors in ITD. The best case scenario is he wins you the entire game just by stealing missions. The Vox Thief is, he gives out APL. He's just a comms guy. He's got a cool name, but he just gives out APL. That's great. And last but certainly not least, on the must-haves are the Bullgrin and the Ogryn. I do 2 times Bullgrin and 1 times Ogryn. Those are my favorite. I do 2 Bullgrin with the Maul and Slab shields, ready to just tank objectives and charge everyone. And then I take the 1 Ogryn to give it a +1 APL so I can do a charge, fight, shoot in some combination. There's so many different scenarios where you'd want to take different Bullgrin, but I think this is just what I'm going to be running indefinitely. I'm sure there's better micro decisions that you could make per game, but I think I can only reliably say that 1 Ogryn is going to get +1 APL, and so I want that to be an Ogryn. Sure, I could get crack grenades to make Bullgrin kind of Ogryn-y, but I don't think it's worth it. I think the Slab Shield is most reliable because 3-up saves are insane. The Grenadier Gauntlet's just not that interesting. It might be funny to bring out with like Chaos Cults, but you're not really going to get a bunch of blast targets in this edition, I don't think. Plus, it's only hitting on 4s. So overall, Ripper Gun goes crazy. 3-up to shoot the Ripper Gun. You can charge and do damage with the Ogryn. Then you have 2 Bullgrin who are just tanking things and hitting people with sticks repeatedly until they die or someone else does. I don't think there's many wrong decisions here. Okay, now for things that are good, but I don't think you need to take them every single game, but like most games I like these. These are the Raider. I think the Raider's crazy. I think it's really good. I'm not saying that it's bad. The Slingshot combined with the Larcenous Ploy is insane. It just like gets any objective that you want on the map most times, but like it is only if you want objectives, which not all missions are having you try and take the backline enemy objective. He also only has a suppressed sniper rifle with Dev 1, so if you want like a full sniper with a 2-up to hit, then you might want to swap that out or something. Same issue with the Sneak. It's only got the Dev 1 silent sniper, but if you want silent, both these operatives are great. Sneak's evade dash is really nice, and the anti-obscuring can be decent on submaps. I take both of these every single time at this point, particularly the Raider, because you're getting basically a 12-inch teleport on most maps. That said, I do know there are other opinions, and we're going to get to those in a second. One operative you don't take is the Hard Bit. It's really cute, but having a melee rat is bad. You don't have wound mitigation to justify it. You don't have damage output to justify it, even with their special rules. On a charge, you can't even reliably kill a guardsman without a crit. It's cute, but it's bad. Speaking of cute and bad, I think the dog is cute and bad. Okay, like, I get it. I think the dog is probably good, but I don't like it. If you like the dog, I think you're probably better than me, actually. But hear me out. I would rather have a full Ratling than a free dasher fallback with one of my other operatives. If the enemy is getting past my Ogryn, then I think I've done something wrong, and if they're getting past my Ogryn and past my dog, then I'm in trouble. I don't think this free dash and fallback is going to save me there. That said, I think there are some potential good use cases, which you should listen to some other commentators about if you think this is possibly good. I think the dog might be okay against Eldar or other teams with high mobility, particularly Void Dancers who can just sort of teleport past you. And I think there's something to be said about throwing the dog into something, say, like the Blooded's Ogryn and sort of keeping it locked up while you shoot at it for a turn before sending your own Ogryn in. Again, listen to other people. I don't take the dog, really. Last but not least, the sniper. I only mention the sniper because it's not like a trooper. It's actually good. You get +1 to hit for no special rules. That means it's a standard 2-up sniper rifle, which is like not bad at all. It's actually better than the sneak in a lot of circumstances. I think the silent is really cute on the sneak and can be useful as well as the anti-obscuring, but there's some scenarios where you just want to be shooting your sniper rifles, and I could consider the sniper. Have I said sniper enough? Sniper? Sniper, sniper? All right, let's get to equipment. Equipment matters so much. You get 5 choices because your fixer gives you an extra. If you're using the same team loadout I have, that means you get better mines, you get double ammo caches, and you get the free tripwires, which I sort of put under equipment because they're deployables. The double ammo cache is really good usually, especially on ITD, where you can just sort of toss them on doors that you know you'll be near. I like the mine a lot now because you can sort of one-shot most models or low wound models and damage a bunch of others. It ignores your own Ratlings, which is fun, but it does hit your own Ogryn, so be careful. And also it doesn't ignore fly, so if the enemy has fly, they can sort of fly over it. As for faction equipment, purloined rations is amazing. Getting a 2-up or a 3-up on mobile profiles is just great. Once per turning point, not bad at all, especially because you can also take lucky rounds, which means if you're not getting that 2-up or whatever, you can just guarantee a crit with severe, and you get to do that after rolling, which is really nice. It's impossible to waste. You can use it on someone who already has a 2-up like the tank snapper, and you're basically going to kill whatever you're shooting. Stolen goods is bad because you'll just always roll a 1 if you take this. You think you won't, but then you'll roll a 1 and be very sad when you lose a CP. Take this in funny casual games every single time and never take it in any other circumstance. Improvised armor is like cool, but there's just so many better uses for equipment options. I mean, 5-up crit saves on Bulgrin with 3-up slab shields is pretty good, but just like go with other equipment options. The equipment I go for is mines, ammo cache, purloined rations, lucky round, and then for the last one, I usually go for either a heavy barricade, a razor wire, portable barricade, or smokes. Some people take crack grenades because they want their Bulgrin to have a ranged option or to have their like 8-inch throw a crack grenade Ratling move. It's fine. I haven't had the desire to do that yet because I've just sort of rathered to do other things during the game, but I could see that being fun. The Bulgrin don't really have the APL to do all that. They're usually just going to be charge fight the whole game. Razor wires, I think, are often the right choice, but heavy barricade can be fun because you can place it 4 inches from your drop zone now, and you can put your Ogryn in a good position with a recon dash and then give him +1 APL. You can do some funny things turning point 2 that way if your enemy's really aggressive. Ultimately, best things, mines, ammo cache, purloined rations, lucky. That's what I go guaranteed. As for objectives, let's do Tac Ops first. They get security and infiltration. As for security is concerned, I think Contain is great if you have clear sight lines to your enemy models before your board half. It's not great if you can't guarantee you can kill whatever comes into your board half. It's not great if they get covered. If they can't, you can probably score this every round. It's a little risky, but I kind of like Contain. Take ground is fine, but I don't like anything that requires you to control objectives on Ratlings. Much rather do mission actions on Ratlings. For this reason, Secure Center is also just fine, but Infiltration has mission actions with Surveillance, which is fantastic. You can torque up your Stash Master with 11 inches of movement, or your Raider can do a 12-inch teleport, and then you can do this mission action, and you can just score it reliably. Thumb maps, it's a little more tricky, and so you might want to do something else, but I think you can pretty reliably get Surveillance most games. Implant is fine. I don't like it in general. I'd rather just be doing damage, and I think there's better Tac Ops here, but it's not awful. And Wiretap, I think, is just worse than Surveillance. As for Crit Ops, Ratlings love objectives that you can take and hold, or can grab and steal. This is most objectives this edition. Why is this important? Well, the Stash Master and the Raider can easily run up to objectives and touch them, with the Raider being able to do so even with enemy operatives blocking their path because of the swing is sort of a teleport. This combined with the Larcenous Tac Ploy means you can steal enemy objectives. So what's good? That means loot, Upload, compile intel, extraction, sabotage, and power surge are like amazing objectives. This means that transmission, secure, and coordinates are fine. These ones can either be stolen back, you need control, or it's just like overall a little harder than the other ones. That said, there's no real bad ones for Ratlings. There's no like capture where you just sort of sit there and hope you capture it. Last but not least, let's look at Strat Ploys and Tac Ploys. As for strategic ploys, sniper positions, shifty, both of these are very good. Shifty gives you super conceal. This is just very good. This means light barricades are now heavy barricades, essentially. Sniper positions is good because it gives all your non-silent sniper rifles silent, which is crazy good. Crack shots is fine, it gives you balance, but you have a ton of other ways to get balance, like the ammo caches. And frontline assault, I've used actually quite a bit in games, but I don't think it's like super critical. It's sort of a leftover CP thing. It gives your Bullgrin and Ogrin balance, which I think is worthwhile in a number of situations, but it's not an every turn kind of thing. As for your Tac Ploys, Larcenous is amazing. You don't have to have control of an objective to do a mission action. That's very, very funny. You also can do it while in control range. You always want a CP held for Larcenous every single turning point, except the first, of course. This is the best ploy in this whole team, and maybe the whole game. I'm gonna say that. I think it's kind of crazy. I suspect it might get nerfed. Mark my words. Sharp shot is good. You can just shoot into melee. That is nice and delicious and very fun. This is good when you have a 16 wound Ogrin just holding down a guy for a while. Survival Instincts is just sort of bad and not worth spending CP on in my opinion. And Shoot and Hide is okay. It's good. I would use it, but I haven't really come into a situation where I haven't had silent or I really like mind that they're in the open right now. It's a good get out of jail free card if you need it. So now that you've digested all of this, what is their broad strategy? Deployment should be focused on identifying sight lines for your big shot and spotter to cover, as well as having where you want your Ogrin to be, which is likely to be on each objective. You shouldn't deploy to exert your force onto the enemy's home objective. You can leave that for the raider to contest and steal, but don't try and rush it turning point 2. Only rush it if it's going to be something like extraction or you know that you need to do so like on sabotage. Instead, focus on locking down your half of the board. Use equipment to make it harder for your opponent to get into your territory or onto your home and middle objectives, even if you don't have contain. You're using your equipment, your mines, your tripwires to funnel your opponent into the safest positions they can be in. Then you need to have those safe positions covered by your bomber, by your Ogrin, and by your spotter. This will let you dive in later in the game. If you keep them off the middle of the map, you essentially win, but you can really press your advantage by pushing towards their home objective after that point. Your Ogrin and Bullgrin's whole job is to keep the enemy's attention for as long as they can. Sometimes that means charging and not fighting, especially because you can sharp shot into that melee. All the while, think about where you want to be using your Scarpers. Are you using them offensively to get shots off, or are you using them defensively after shooting with another operative already? Like for most teams, you really want to be paying attention to enemy charge lanes. Your Ratlings are not super vulnerable to shooting, so your opponent is probably going to leverage their melee threats. That means it's on you to keep an eye out for them and cover them with your Bullgrin or your Ogrin, or keep them out of dodge with Scarper. Other than that, just sort of hope you roll 6s, you know? Devastating runes are very good. That's all I've got for today. My name's Nick from Venture Minis. It's good to see you. I am going to be at Adepticon playing the doubles tournament with my Ratlings. It's going to be a good time. Hope to see you there. Follow my Instagram. Follow my Blue Sky. I do other things other than Kill Team because I have a bunch of hobbies like a bunch of nerds do. So if you like vampires, check me out. Trans rights and have a good day.